All right. Thanks to OldSchoolDM's first experimental live stream and Zoom conversation of papercrafting. I picked a simple model to do. It is a lean-to. This is an add-on for the small farmhouse model, and available to patrons of Paper Schnitzel. That'd be out Paper Schnitzel. And this is the small farmhouse kit here. I'll put it so you can see it. And I've made a bunch of those fold flat. And my technique is to literally, because they're so small and they'll fit in the box folded, is to make them fold like that. And I keep the tabs on the bottom, and then I have drop-in floors. And that's really simple model. I really like it because it gets put together real fast and put away real fast at the table. So I'm going to do the same thing to this. And the things I need are the original model page, which you can get from if you're thing. And then I printed, and I like insides, so I printed an inverse. And rather than do RoboCutter, I'm going to manually cut these, just because it's really easy. And getting the RoboCutter all set up and everything is a pain in the butt, and having to reverse the images. For the floor, I have a floor texture, which I grabbed somewhere, not even sure where, which I printed on sticker paper. Avery sticker paper, mail label paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out how much I need. I'm going to put it on some fairly thick black core, and then I'm going to glue that into the model. So all the things I need are right here, all pre-printed, and I'm going to go over it. And so if you want to talk about anything while we do this, this is, to tell the truth, I've always been hoping to do something social in terms of, building stuff out. So this is why I'm trying to do something like this, and I apologize for all the technical faults. There are two things I'm doing wrong for sure. I don't have a cable connected right now. I probably should. I am connected to my 5 gigahertz network, and my laptop's probably not powerful to run 3 cameras and Zoom and OBS. So far, OBS is not complaining that it's falling behind, so that's a good sign. So yeah, top wall we cut. So I'm not doing anything unusual. I will be cutting the tabs off the top that are in here. See, it's going to be kind of hard to see because I have a close-up cam. There are some drawn-in tabs. I'm not going to do those because I'm just going to rest with the exception of the back one, because I'm going to glue the roof to the back tab, so it'll flap down. If we look at the kit real quick, that roof goes up to the back and goes flat. You can build it that it overhangs, so it's its own little shed. But I'm going to build it to go up against one of my buildings, so I'm going to cut it off, and there's a cut line specified right here. Let me switch cameras again. There's a red cut line here is where you're supposed to cut it off, which I'm going to cut it off so that it goes flush. That's going to be glued to the back wall, which is the tall wall. So it just flops down. So when you fold it, it's going to fold up, that thing's going to fold sideways, and the bottom will fold out. And I'll just get a little, or I can fold it in either way, it doesn't matter. I'm also going to extend the bottom tabs a little bit. Although I don't think I need to do this. For the bigger building I do. And the bottom tabs are for the floor to sit in, with the exception of the one that is glued to. So let's just go ahead and cut this out. I still need the side tabs because I'm going to glue it together. So, Michael, why don't you tell everyone who you are?
Well, Mike Proteau, I run PaperRealms. Been enjoying tabletop gaming for most of my life, and kind of took pleasure in the papercrafting aspect of putting stuff on the table. So, I don't know, it was around 2015 or so when I finally decided to hang out my shingle and give my own products a try. But before then, been following all sorts of people making great papercraft terrain, so that's kind of how I got into the hobby in the first place, was finding great folks like Fat Dragon and Dave Grafflin, and I think David Oldham's minis were what drew me into doing paper crafting.
I was always curious because you seem like a bit of a builder before you were designer. Is that right? I'm using a metal chopstick to do my scoring.
So I mean, by day I'm a software engineer, and my brain really appreciates things that fit into a certain order. And so Papercraft terrain has this really nice geometry to it that, I don't know, I've always just found to be pleasing to assemble, to be able to modify, but to follow kind of some basic rules so that you can come up with interchangeable designs or whatnot. And so it was kind of a creative outlet for me to step away from writing software and doing something that was just a little more art related. So yeah, I was kind of into that, assembling the buildings and things like that. It's just kind of a way of it's like a little moment of zen, to bust out the metal ruler and the cutting blade and just spend some time in the moment of the crafting. But then it turns out I really enjoyed pixel pushing and kind of working on my own textures and things like that. So that kind of was how I navigated into making my own stuff.
Cool. Yeah, for a while you've got you've got a Patreon now where you've made like 200 cut files to make it easier for other people to build these models. You want to mention it? You want to plug it while you're here?
Sure. It started out a long time ago, just being a member of the Cardboard Warriors forums, and now on Facebook, and just loved collecting and assembling paper minis. But early on in my paper crafting, my family had all chipped in together and helped me get. It's just a big game changer for me, and the amount of material that I could produce was just dramatically increased. But I was at the mercy of somebody making cut files so that I could get things cut out quickly. And you were kind of one of the inspirations for me, really getting to learn the software and start making cut files for a lot of the free minis that were showing up on the Cardboard Warriors forum and just sharing them with the community at large. Started turning these things out though so much that it was getting kind of expensive. And honestly, most of the things that I make cut files for, I do it to share the cut files more than I do to actually use the minis. I've got thousands of minis that I've cut out, but there's only so much opportunity to bust them out and play with them all.
So I love I love everybody.
Anyway, yeah, so I started this Patreon.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I started this Patreon as kind of a way to help motivate me to keep making these cut files and keep sharing them. To kind of look for ways of sharing tips and tricks and helping other people get familiar with good cutting machines. There's a lot of it's not always easy to get information on how to use these machines or which one to even buy. So just being around as a resource for people to ask questions is kind of nice, even if you're not a patron of mine. I'm more than happy to answer questions. But PaperRealms on Patreon, you'll find, like I said, hundreds now of cut files ranging from paper minis by Trash Mob Minis and Kev's Lounge and Okamarts, to some of the old school minis paper minis that you'll find on Drive-Thru RPG. A lot that maybe people don't even realize are out there because there's just so many resources. It's kind of hard to track things down. So another thing that I enjoy doing is just showcasing some of the older minis and trying to get people aware of what's out there and interested in it.
I agree with that. what got me started, like you said, was I made cut files for a bunch of hand-drawn minis by Dry W the Harper was a guy on cardboard-warriors.proboards.com for those who are paying attention to this in the future. And his style was really interesting. It was he drew them with magic markers and then scaled them down. And this is made for a very colorful, high contrast miniatures. And so I just made those real fast. I like that they were kind of sloppy, and the cut files kind of clean them up a bit because you now were able to precisely align the fronts and the backs and things like that. I really enjoyed building cut files, and I was very excited when you started making them, and then you took over and created a Patreon to make it worthwhile to make more of them. It's particularly hard because the manufacturer doesn't really acknowledge this pattern, although they support registration marks. They don't support the idea of these cut files being shared inherently, and they've changed formats of the reg marks, invalidating all the early artwork. And you could tell some stories.
These days, it's kind of unfortunate that the technology moved in different ways, and I had spent a lot of time advocating for paper mini makers to build reg marks into their PDF to make it easier to just print the PDF and then feed it right into the cutter with the cut files and have it work.
Right.
And turned out that this is kind of a fraught with peril. Some folks, most of these folks who are the artists, they love making these miniatures, but they themselves don't have a cutting machine, so they're kind of flying blind with what is important about the layout and those sorts of things. So a lot of what I end up doing when I release a set of cut files on my Patreon is it comes with a README that will hopefully identify some of the gotchas, because a lot of times things just don't work out straight out of the box. You might have to move things around the page a little bit, or sometimes the PDFs are misformatted, and so you don't even want to print out the PDF at all. I haven't made a lot of how-to videos, but one of the videos that I did do was showing how to use the cut file software to separate the minis off the page. So that you can slide them around and kind of relay out the page before you print and cut them.
I need to watch that. I've been doing that with Photoshop, which is a pain. So I got to watch that video.
Oh, it's so it's become second nature to what I do. So it's you can open up a PDF and quickly take a screen capture straight out of the PDF, paste it into the cut files, and then there's kind of a simple 2 or 3 click process to separate the minis from the page using the cut lines. And even if you're not going to send it through a cutter, it's kind of an interesting process because it means you can easily relay out the PDF that you might have got from an artist so that you can squeeze more onto the page. Maybe you're going to send it to a print shop to get printed, or you're using photo paper or something, and you'd like to kind of maximize what you're getting out of that. So it turns out the cutting software is free, or at least there's a free edition that you can use. That's what I've been using for the last 10 years. You can install the software without a cutting machine and take advantage of some of those features. And there are if you have other graphics tools that you're used to, certainly you can use those as well. But it's always nice to have tools in the toolbox to get things done.
For anyone who's watching and wondering what I'm doing here, I'm cutting up the back here. So, for example, looking at the roof in the close-up cam here, I'm cutting an underneath piece which is smaller. In the case of the wall sides, this is the outside wall. I'm cutting these into each segment. Wherever there's a fold, I'm cutting a thing separately so that when glued in, it's going to be smaller, slightly smaller. I cut in a little bit. So I have no problem cutting by hand. I cut the outside pieces precisely with the edge, but I don't need to for the internal ones because they need to be slightly smaller anyway. Because the idea is when it's fold, you don't want to put too much stress on the fold joint. And if you try to glue two pieces of paper together, it is very hard to prevent that from becoming a tear joint. And so on the outside here, I don't use scoring as a method. I use kind of an embossing approach. And so my edges here are really clean and don't require any edging, whereas if they start to tear, you're going to need it. And folding and unfolding can cause a lot of stress right along this point. So if it's a particularly...
That's a
Go ahead.
That's a key crafting point that I think a lot of paper terrain designers don't point out when they're building supposedly full flat models.
Yeah.
It doesn't emphasize enough the need to keep those joints relatively strong, because over time you're going to fold and unfold and fold and unfold that paper, and it's just going to continue to weaken the joint. It's just not going to hold together.
Yeah. For the houses,
there's no reason why paper models can't.
For the houses, actually, what I did was I glued these things together. The pieces were not glued, the edges that are not glued here, the folded edges, and the ones that are glued. I actually put some masking tape on the inside of that seam, so that I get a long life out of doing this, out of opening and unopening this thing. So the interior parts are separate, all separate panels, with a gap. So if we, it might not, I probably can't show it really well on this camera at the moment, but there's a fairly large gap when it's folded, when it's flat, and that's so when it comes together, everything shifts in such a way that the gaps all close. But like I said, for these pieces, I did a tape reinforcement. For today, I'm not going to do that. This little piece is just for fun. But what I would do then, looking at the close-up camera here, is I would just put a piece of masking tape right in here. It makes that really strong. It took a lot of practice to learn that. And a lot of sadness. And that's why I choose an embossing method and not a scoring method on my edges, because if you score it, you've already weakened it. And so with cutting machines, for example, for a long time, the default scoring method is dashed cuts, which fold really easily and tear even easier. A number of my early models have had perforated walls. It's like, whoa, look, the wall got ripped. Because I have a thing. I like fat. I like flat. I really like flat. And so, that's what happens. If you do perfs, guess what a perf is?
So when you're printing out the interior, when you print out the interior, how did you go about inverting the textures?
Well, for today, because I'm lazy, I just literally flipped the image in Photoshop and printed it.
Okay.
Or not Photoshop, I have a full copy of Adobe. But what I often do is in Silhouette, I flip and shrink to 99%. Because that way, if I had a cut files, the cut files will reduce, and then I change the fold lines to cut lines. That's how I get the separate pieces. So I end up with lots and lots of little scraps of pieces when I do the interior. I'm just doing this by hand now. And so this piece will be inverted inside, like that. Show that to the camera. And there's enough space that I can fold it. And not make it move about. And I trimmed just the tiniest bits off the side, but like 99% scale has worked out really well in practice. So yeah, inverted 99%. If you're using a cut file, do it in Studio, so the cut file shrinks as well. And these are the folds. So I did emboss. I'm going to do fold. So for those who don't know, the way to make your models good, it's the reason your minis aren't finished, is edging. My least favorite part of this hobby. So, edging. I love Tombow pens. What do you like, Mike? What do you use for edging?
What do I use? Just hang on a second. What do I use? I have. You can talk about edging. So yeah, whatever is on sale, I'll go and grab it.
Okay.
And so back to school time is a great time for me for picking up pens.
So thick
the ones
markers.
that I really like are just the chisel tip. I lost my focus here. Chisel tip Sharpies.
Okay.
You think that they'd be chunkier and harder to work with on minis and tight corners and things, but I find that as long as you're working from the untextured back of the paper, I can get at pretty much any nook and cranny, anything that isn't easily accessible.
Right.
Just kind of rest the pen there for a moment, let the ink soak in.
Yeah.
But it also is a nice tip for me to. I oftentimes will edge, just color in the back edge of something before I glue it together, just to avoid any kind of whiteness of the paper showing.
Yeah. So I'll show some of those techniques now for our audience if we have one. Maybe we're just the audience. All right. So here's an interior piece, and I'm going to do it face down. And what he's saying about, I don't have any detail places, but he's absolutely right. You go around the object, and now your edge is pretty much done, unless your cut isn't even, and then you can just run it around the outside if you want to. But yeah, the biggest problem with edging is if you try to do it from the front, or after a thing is made, it's so easy to get a streak of your edging ink on your model. We hate that.
Yeah, it's so frustrating when you
So
get lost
frustrating.
on your texture.
Yeah. So my favorite pen actually is this exact one. I cannot have enough of these. This is a Tombow ABT N57, which is a see if we can get the color. It's kind of it's a muddy, it's a warm mud gray, and I just find as for weathering, which is kind of for most of the models I'm interested in, I want that like buildings. It's not what I use for minis. For minis, I use a real black because I really like a black edge. I also put a paper core, a black paper core inside my minis to stiffen them up. So the nice thing about a cut file is you can cut without registration lines. You can just say, cut me out of this black piece of paper, this shape, and then I glue 3-layer minis, front, back, and a core, and then edging with black. In that case, you edge with black pretty much after the case. But so yeah.
I only just recently bought black cardstock, and so I'm kind of showing off. I ran some detailed walls that I've been cutting out.
I love those. Those prison walls. I'm going to do those. So that's the kind of thing a cutter is born for, which is to cut thousands of straight lines real close to each other, which humans cannot do. So by using a non-scoring technique, a non-cutting, non-piercing technique, I can do all these folds without having to edge them. So one of the nice things is no edging on the folds. But I do want to show one thing that I like to do when doing full flat models, and that is wherever there's a fold seam on the inside, I use the edging pen there, so that when I glue the interiors in, instead of showing white at the gaps, it shows this neutral gray at the gaps. Likewise on the floor, so when the floor folds down, if it doesn't go evenly up to the wall on the interior, you'll just see gray, and it looks like the floor goes all the way to the edge. And so I'm going to do this for the floor and for the ceiling on this one. I'm going to be careful on the ceiling. I'm going to do a construction technique to hide the tab for the ceiling and hide the tab for the floor. Actually, I'm not going to bother trying to hide the tab for the floor. All right, so I think everything is edged. And we can move on to talking about gluing. So this is a Kitbash. In this case, this model isn't specifically designed to have an interior, although the buildings are. It literally provides options for an interior textures and exterior ones. Also, the small farmhouse kit, I just love it. It also comes with the deluxe kit, comes with these dimensional, see if I can get a good look at them, pop-off objects, and likewise the wood from the Wattle and Daub sticks up. You can cut those. And again, I would never do it without a cutter, but a cutter lets you just say, oh, look at all those planks. They're all three-dimensional, which I really like. I've only done that for one building, though. It's still a lot of fussy work. Gluing it down takes a lot of work because you've got to glue a lot, a lot of surface all at once, all separate. All right, so this didn't have an interior. That's why I did the reverse. The pop-ups technique that Chris likes to use at Papio Schnitzel is more sophisticated than I like to use. It works great. He puts a third layer in the middle, which you can then slip the tabs into, and he does the sides. This model is too small for that. I'm just going to do the pop-up thing. But I want to be careful in constructing it so that I don't block off, so I don't have to hide the tabs. One of the fun things I've done on occasion is actually printed a texture on the tab, which is for the wraparound space, so that I can glue it in on the inside instead of having to put it between the layers. So the tricky part is that in order to hide this tab, I'm going to have to glue the interior to it before assembly. So I need to, did not edge that, did not color that. So in a strange way, I'm going to build the interior a little bit into the exterior, so it hides the connection tabs. I can't, you can't do it all the way around, so I'm going to have to worry about that. Oh, I should also do that edge on the outside. Yeah, I'm going to also do a little bit of edging on the outside tab in case of any. When you're folding flat, you don't get exactly the same clean seams, just because things are wiggling around as you're gluing them. So I like to add a little, I just like coloring more, just in case anything starts to show, and it's hard to do after the fact. It's much easier to color this all in now than to try to color it in later. All right, how do we want to do this? I think we will put the pieces all out here. We will glue. Gotta make sure I match the indoors and the outdoors properly. When you print inverse, the easiest to tell is where is the door handle. So this could go in here anytime. Maybe I'll just put that in and get that drying first. Get it out of my way. All right, time to talk about glue. What do you like, Mike?
I use a little bit of everything. Depends on what I'm assembling, but lately I've been using a number of glue sticks, just really cheap glue sticks for tabs and kind of small surface areas like that. But when I do large walls for the terrain, for example, or when I'm doing paper minis, I've got a setup where I use spray glue. I use some 3M Super 77 spray glue.
Yeah.
It's messy, but I've got a setup where I set up a large box, and I put the material in the bottom of the box on a magazine or some old flyer or something that I'm going to throw it anyway. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I can put everything with the untextured side facing up, give a quick spray of the spray glue. It takes just a second, and then carefully sandwich everything together, and it allows for extremely quick assembly of a lot of material. And I've found that it doesn't. There's no risk of moisture bleeding through the paper or warping because there's too much moisture. So that's kind of my primary go-to is using spray glue whenever I can.
I will be right back. I spilled some soda.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Okay, disaster averted.
That is living dangerously with the liquids in the Papercraft.
It's way over there. That's the part of the problem. Is I reached way out to grab one of my tools and bumped into it. So for those who were watching, I've had some experience with UHU glue sticks. For large surfaces, I do not like them. Everything I ever did with those has come apart after years. So I haven't tried them for tabs though. But for everything, generally, I use Scotch clear glue with two-way applicator. This is also known as their Papercrafters glue or Scrapbookers glue or something like that. It's the same stuff. It comes purple or red. And I use this to spread the glue. It's called a flat chisel color shaper for painting, but it's elastic. The glue doesn't stay on it, which is nice. I can just peel it off if the glue dries on it, and I can use it again. And I really like it's unlike spray glue. I get some time to move stuff around. I get a few seconds, which for me is really important because I'm always putting stuff down in the wrong place. Yeah, and it works for reasonably large spaces, but I also use spray for very large things, like if I'm doing whole sheets of maps and things like that on a tile. And a technique I've discovered working with your walls is I use 2-inch wide double sticky tape stuff. It's this adhesive that you can put down and then peel off, and you've just laid a layer of adhesive. And it's the perfect size for your 2-inch tall tiles. Just lay a piece down, chop it off, trim it, peel back, and then put the next thing on. So it's like doing spray glue without spray, and I can do it on both sides. I like, again, a hard core, so I put black core between your tiles. So I end up with your textured paper, glue, tile, glue, textured paper, and the glue is perfectly aligned. It covers the whole space. Whereas I don't think I would do that. Is one of the reasons I didn't like building those things is putting this glue on was a pain in the butt to do that. Now it's just like, shoot, chop, and glue. So there are a whole bunch of techniques like that. I'm going to go ahead and glue these little guys in while we chat more.
I spent years using just plain white school glue.
Yeah. That's very watery, isn't it?
I like doing things on the cheap. And, one of the things that they don't teach, I guess, in my preschools is how to use school glue in moderation. But once you get the hang of
spreading it out,
just using a very light amount, and I always use my fingertip to spread that stuff around, and then wipe it off on a piece of scrap paper. But kind of similar to what you're doing there, just to get a nice even coat of glue. And as long as you don't overdo it, you got to be really careful with that type of glue that kind of it's a little more watery.
Yeah.
But even that's not unreasonable for paper crafting.
So do you use a brayer or anything like this?
I got one. I'm kind of sitting at my daytime job desk here. Is also my nighttime crafting desk. So everything is kind of streamed about. I do have a brayer. I don't find myself using it very often. And I think it's just because before I had the brayer, I was so used to taking a scrap piece of paper, putting it on top of what I want to throw, and then I just throw my thumb over it. Always had reasonable results with that too.
All right, so I'm going to show a construction error here. if you look, you can see this is not lined up perfectly. And this is when edging helps. Like, I don't care. Boom. Neutral gray pen. Problem fixed. So, if I didn't call myself the old school TM, I'd call myself the lazy TM. The lazy builder. That's part of my challenge. Is how can I build it so cheaply it doesn't matter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the inside on one side of the tabs and the outside on the other side of the tab, and then do the final gluings. Because then just gluing one surface will glue it all together in a loop. That's kind of a trick with doing full flat structures with an interior, is to realize the interior can be part of your structure. You don't have to do this weird thing where you build the exterior and now how do I get the interior in and how do I clip it flat and things like that. It's like, no. You can just build this one long thing, and then you just have this huge thing, which is this size is your last tab. You make the last piece, the whole piece, your last tab. What am I doing next? Here we go. Triminy. And I glued the right piece in. So I don't know if I can see it in the camera here, but the gap I was talking about, if I pull this out, you can see there's a gray gap. It would be, if I didn't put gray in there, you'd see this big white split between those. And that's what edging the inside does for you. All right, I glued that tab to the interior. Now I'm going to do the exterior.
Yeah, that can't be stressed enough, but that's kind of the secret to really attractive paper modeling.
Yeah.
I mean, getting clean cuts and good folds is great, but knowing where to edge and hiding those glaring white edges just really finishes off the model, so that they just blend into the background. You don't even notice that they're corners.
Yeah. And that's why I love my neutral color here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy. So what I've got is this really long, odd piece, and you won't find this in any current instructions. The exterior wall, I'm looking at the interior now, and the exterior wall is the last tab. This is the last tab on the interior wall. If I flip it over, I'm looking at the exterior, and this is the last tab on the exterior wall, which is the interior of it. So this is going to be great. I just glue this one piece up and attach it, and I got a four-sided object that folds. Because it already folds. Right? Just glue it together like that. Bam. This is where you'll find, this is a good time to do a test fit and go, hey, you know what, there's too much there, so I'm going to trim a little bit off of this guy. I want it to fit a little tighter. So
especially with those, when you have regular shapes, especially with the buildings, and you're doing that kind of assembly, because the whole thing should be able to smush flat.
Yeah.
It gives you a great way of making sure that everything is aligned properly and the base is all lined up, because you can kind of drop it, fold it in on itself, and just see that all those lines really do match up.
Okay, surface is ready. I also like to do this technique of not assembling in 3D, but assembling in 2D. I make it nice and flat. So I just glue the model pre-folded. This is just how I like to do boxes. So I'm gluing to the fold, not to the box. And this might lead to an exposed corner, which I'll deal with if I get it, which I did. But that's okay. That's what I got the gray pen. That's what I got the pen for. And again, this has to do with laziness and strength. I really want these to store flat. That's more important than having 4 perfect corners. All right, and I made a mistake. I should have glued in the floor and the ceiling. But hey, that's how that works. But you can see the general shape here. It's already ready for the main camera and for that. It's just a tiny box. Man, this thing's really tiny. So let's do the roof. So I'm going to do the same thing for the roof. I put a little edge here in case anyone sees anything. In fact, I should edge the outside of this. Well, no, they're going to be buried, but sometimes it's okay to over edge. If you're not 100% sure if something's going to be visible or not, doesn't hurt anything to edge it. You wasted a little tiny bit of edging ink and effort, but I like better being safe than sorry and trying to fix it later. So, Mike, you have buildings in your kits, right? You have some buildings.
I have some static buildings. It's kind of how it started. When I first took on PaperRealms, it was a big learning curve for me for how to make the textures, how to assemble the PDFs, how to put together all the packaging, set up a storefront on drive-thru. And so I kind of wanted to start with some fairly simple models that were easy to assemble. And I'd really like to get back into making some more of them now that I've got a little more experience with texturing under my belt. Because I know that the simple buildings tend to be the ones that are fun to Kitbash.
Right.
Add a little bit of variety to it. But yeah, I started doing that with some buildings where, see if I have one floating around here. Yeah, so this was kind of a fun model to practice with some different 3D tools to get the hang of. And it started out as just a single rectangular building, but I wanted to see if I could make it a little interesting. So I fused a couple of shapes together. It's still very simple assembly techniques, but it leads to a very rigid model, and it gives you more variety. So instead of just one building, you can really make a couple out of these basic geometries.
That's cool.
And so lately I've been focused mostly on modular terrain. There's just so many projects to be working on. But I've got kind of a laundry list of ideas for individual buildings that I'd like to play with. And I hopefully can get to the point where I'll be able to share some of the textures between these static buildings or full flat buildings with the modular terrain. All comes down to time, though. It all comes down to time.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm doing now is I'm trimming my under roof for the thatch to match, to allow room for the fold over eaves that are on the model. Since I had to kind of do this, I have to eyeball this. The good news is, again, it does not have to be precise. This is just so that when you open it, it's not white. That's the whole point. It's not white. That's all that matters. And you know what? We're going to call that enough. Good enough. Move that up. And then I got to do the floor. The good news is the floor already has glue on it. This would be trivial. So this allows me to hide that inner tab that's using to pop up the thing. Oh, did I cut it a little too late? No, it's all right. There we go. And because I didn't do it in advance, this is a little awkward, but since I can fold it flat, I can do this anyway. And so there's an example. The roof will, now I put it a little too close. I need to fold the roof again. Good news is the same tools that you can use the first time, you can use them again. I'm using this to make the fold tighter. I can do it on the other side too. All right, we'll deal with that in a moment. And that last will be the floor. And now I know the floor is like 1 inch by 3 inches, I think. Not even that. That's what I love about my mat. 1 by 3, yeah. Well, that's handy.
So you're going through this work of building this interior for this, but do you envision being able to actually access that space for gameplay?
I don't know. This one maybe not. Yeah, I mean, it's 1 inch, so minis will fit in there. So I could put a guard in by the door or something, or decorator minis. I'm going to cut 1 inch off of this. The best thing about a mat is you don't need to draw. Get the edge lined up right. Do you ever cut directly using your mat measurements?
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
All the time. And for a lot of things that you're doing, super precision. So when it comes to scoring lines, because I want to make sure that they're very precise so that things will line up.
Yeah.
But you kind of get a feel for a lot of cuts don't need to necessarily be, super precise.
Right.
For the model to look just fine.
Yeah, and that's what I was to do with the interior walls. I wasn't flat on all of them. It was like, as long as it's smaller than the model, I'm all right.
Yeah, and so you kind of, in order to balance out, you're putting in the extra effort for edging to really make the model look nice on the table. There are places where you can kind of cut corners, so to speak. It's not such a time sink, but it's not really going to impact either the stability or the visual quality of the model. So definitely, I freehand a lot of stuff. There are some things that I don't even line up on my cutting mat. I'm going to have to duck it a second. I hear my dog.
I'm going to start with the measurements, I think it is, but I'm going to actually test fit it to the model. But this stuff, it's not. There is, in fact, a template for the floor in there. It's white, so you can make it solid. But I didn't bother printing that or cutting that that way. I don't know, I like it. So that's a sturdy piece. I might glue it in just to that tab. I do have a little problem. For those who are looking at the camera, you can see this kind of jumps up a little bit. I might do some more creasing on the tabs. Good news is I can do that while it's folded too. Yeah. Part of the problem is having an interior introduced an extra thickness of paper, so the floor seems to need more. This is one of the reasons I like my brayer, is it can really apply some pressure to things. Now it's not popping up. You know what? I might not even glue that floor in there. I might just leave it as an item to put in. It doesn't seem like I would gain much by forcing it to be glued in. Now, here's my challenge. I messed up the roof here, so I need to fix that. It won't close. So I'm going to spend a lot more time focusing on this seam. So the trouble with being a kitbasher, sometimes you try stuff and you go, oh, I should have done that better. So I'm going to counterfold first. Get some. So in this case, I kind of want to break the seam a little bit. It's in a place that doesn't matter, but I want it to fold. So what happened was I glued too large a piece on my interior, and so I created an extra layer of thickness. This is the kind of thing I'm worried about and why I use tape to reinforce my seams. You're seeing the mistake that taught me that lesson. There we go. That is sufficient for now. Now, another thing I can do, and I've done before, is I can put a glue in a little thing that will provide friction against the object itself, against the wall. But, you know what? I'm going to call that done, because that's just the kind of crafter I am. This is not the world's greatest crafter channel. This is the, hey, look, I got something on my table and it only took me a half hour. I don't have commercial Zoom, and so that means it took less than 40 minutes because we are not been kicked off of Zoom yet. And so the idea is you could kick that and add that to the edge of the house. And bam, let me get the thatch roof I have here. So here's another pop-in floor. Pop that floor in there. Put on the thatch roof. The thatch roof doesn't have the fancies, but it does need a stovetop. Where's my stovetop? There we go. And this is, boom. This one needs, you have to increasing. So the thing with full top lazy. So there we go. I've added a new extension to my house. Certainly, now that one's popping up. Let me fold up those things. Come on. Make it look nice. So whenever I'm preparing for my photos and my games, I also make things nice. I don't hurry. And so I did think about a mod for this, and I think it would be good to increase the fact that it'll stay close to the house now. So it's compatible. Looks fine. This is totally playable. But I was thinking about, let me show this mod I did to the fireplace. So the fireplace just slips on to the models, and it has I have a roof with it cut out. But how do you make the fireplace stay flush? And so I added just a little piece of black, a little black foot, right, which allows it to sit under the house. That's all. So I could do the same thing here. I could add a black foot right here to that tab, and then it would sit more flush against the house, if I cared. But I don't think I do. But I was thinking about that as a possible hack. And that's that. Any comments or thoughts, Mike?
It's awesome. It's great to have just have these simple buildings on hand. So when you're setting up a scene that you're going to be playing out, it's not necessarily the same map that you've been using over and over again, but you can kind of drop in these locations and then occasionally use these bump outs, and you can position them differently on different houses, or you can throw in a different roof on the house.
Yep.
Just something so that it is a really quick scene to set up, but also enough variety that you can kind of fill out your table and make it unique each time.
So Fat Dragon Games, go ahead. Sorry. Fat Dragon Games has a kit, which is a full flat pop-up house kits. And it has a modular, various modular add-ons, both for the things that stick out of the roof. They're blocking out their names. What are they called? A little wing of the house that sticks out of the roof.
You mean the bay windows?
Dormers. So they have, you can drop in dormers. The dormers are separate, and likewise they have add-ons like this that clip on. So this one's just freestanding, but his has little hooks that hang out, and you stick it. And so the walls have holes in them, and you just drop things on the hooks. And so that's kind of fun for customizing. I've not used it much. I have a box for storing a bunch of those. I like them. He uses foam core to try to make his stand up. But it's interesting looking at all the different techniques. But there's plenty of room for new techniques, to be developed all the time. So your own tiles, you use a technique that's similar to the TLX technique from the company WorldWorks Games, which I personally don't like, but I love your tiles, so I adapted them to work a different way, to use a slot model, because I like that. So it's kind of like mixing and matching techniques is really interesting, and everyone can build their own kind of thing, because we're not actually giving them or selling them to each other anyway. So it's whatever makes you happy. What makes me happy is storing this in no space at all.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
this is, and the thing about paper crafting is it's very democratizing, right? It's anybody can get into it. It's super easy to get into. It doesn't take a lot of complicated tools, and you get up to speed pretty quickly with some of the basic techniques. But once you have a little bit of confidence in what you're doing, being able to mix some of the texture, to be able to take from one and apply it to another, and find what, like you said, there's so many different construction techniques. Try them out because it's not that expensive, and see which ones really speak to you, and then you can kind of adapt all the resources that are out there to fit what you enjoy.
It's all ink and paper.
The other thing is you can mix and match techniques.
Yeah. If that roof that I did frustrated me, I can just cut it off and glue on a new one. We were talking earlier about problems with edging. I have on occasion been trying to edge things like roofs after the fact. There's reasons you have to do some of that later. And end up getting ink, and then I just print a little patch of texture and glue it on the roof. So even when you make mistakes, you can just glue over them.
Yeah, I have the full Tombow pen set that I don't break out very often, but I've got 90 some odd Tombow pens, and every once in a while I'll botch something up well enough that I'll just break out the right colors and I'll just hand draw the texture back onto the pen. Yeah,
there's an amazing a lot of water damage on my roofs and other things as I Tombowed in serious water damage where a streak used to be. So those who don't know why the Tombow pens are appealing, it's a brush tip on this end, which is what I use mostly, but it also has a fine tip on the other end, which can be used for some of those detail areas, which I really like. They also don't bleed much, so both Mike and I are using pens that don't bleed too much. If you use something like a Sharpie and you try to get detailed area, you end up with a big blotch on the print side as well, so you have to watch out. So anyway, Mike, thank you so much for coming and hanging out while we did this. It wasn't intended to be a single interviewee kind of thing, but I really kind of liked it. Maybe I'll do that in the future. I'll schedule something.
I was happy to be here. Good time.
Thanks. We're going to hang out now. I'm going to see if the recording worked. If you have any thoughts, please send them to me on the Discord. And about what I could do that was different. It was actually much better than I hoped, having company. It can be quite a solitary thing doing this crafting, and you get all this time loss, and you feel like you want to talk to someone about what you're doing and what you might be doing different and what you could learn from someone else. So I really appreciated your time. And
that's a great resource to be able to see somebody else building things, because you always learn. You get so used to doing it the way that you've always done it that you don't see other ways necessarily. So it's good to see.
Well, I'd be happy if we some of us schedule time to build together and we're all just streaming it together in one big buildy thing. Because I see people building on streams, but I can't read the chat windows. In fact, if anyone visited the Twitch stream and typed things in the chat, they didn't get any replies because I can't figure out where the chat is. And by the way, I wasn't going to read it. So I'm very, very happy with the result, despite maybe network not being as good or the laptop not being as powerful as it should be. But I'm going to let you go now so that I can put a wrap on this. I will put up one last time the kit image. This is Papio Schnitzel. Chris, he makes a whole bunch of great models. And this was his lean-to. I made the narrow one. There's also comes the Patreon also has a wide one that fits on the other side of the house. And you can always look at my builds at OldSchoolDM.com. So, thanks again.